Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Shaw here, ready for video 3 of our journey through the legislative branch. And today we're going to be talking about the powers of Congress. Again, this one is just going to be really straightforward, just really focusing on what Congress can and cannot do. And then the last video will be about how a bill becomes a law. Okay, let's get to it. Powers of Congress. All right, so again, a lot of the stuff you might have already heard about before. Again, I'm just going to kind of go over and be a little bit more specific with it. So, for example, the first thing is commerce powers. Okay, so the power of Congress to regulate interstate and foreign trade. Again, and so this is some examples of things that they can do with this power is they can establish a minimum wage, they can ban discrimination in the workplace, they can regulate banking. Okay, again, all kinds of different examples. Again, so anything that like crosses state lines or anything that has to do with foreign countries and trading with foreign countries, again, that's going to fall under commerce power, and that's going to fall under the the powers of Congress. Okay, money powers include the power to tax. Okay, again, in the Constitution it says collect and lay taxes for the general welfare and defense of the United States. Again, taxes get a bad rap in America. Most people don't like taxes, again, because you're losing money. But the problem is that most of the tax money is going to worthy causes and build better highways and better infrastructure and things that are programs that are designed to help Americans like you and I. They can also punish tax evaders and regulate and outlaw commodities. Again, just like certain things that can't be sold or things like that. It's just, again, I'm not super worried about you knowing that. Obviously, like people that don't pay taxes, like that is a duty that you guys learned about in Unit 1. You have to pay your taxes or else you will be fined and punished by the government. Congress also has borrowing power. Again, they can borrow money for public spending. Again, it just basically they borrow against the credit. It's essentially like a credit card or like getting a loan. Most often, it's called public. Most often the debt that we talk about, as the national debt, most of that debt is actually owed to American citizens. So what people do is they buy bonds, and have you ever seen during World War I and World War II, the propaganda poster, buy war bonds? Okay, that's basically a loan to the government. So what they do is they take your money, okay, and then they're going to give it back to you in 5 or 10 years with a little bit more for interest. Okay, so it's a very stable way to invest for people, and that's why it's very popular. But it's really helpful for the government because again, it allows them to do more if they're not collecting enough tax revenue. Again, the public debt is all the money borrowed by Congress that is not yet repaid. Again, right now it's at $25 trillion. The deficit financing is spending more money than it takes in. Again, that started with the Great Depression. You guys learned about that in the Great Depression. And ever since, deficit spending has really kind of become more of a normal state of our budget ever since the 1930s. And so again, it kind of depends on what party it is. Again, most Democrats they don't really care that much about deficit spending. Republicans think that that's a terrible idea. And what we've kind of seen, though, is that neither party can really get rid of it, though, because there's a lot of things that the government has to pay for. And then the other thing that they can do is that they, for example, under the borrowing power is establish the Federal Reserve System of banks, which again ensures stability in our banking system. And again, it can help prevent some banks from closing down if they run out of funds. Okay, more money powers. Again, they have the bankruptcy power. They have the power to establish laws on bankruptcies. They have the currency power to coin money and regulate the value of legal tender. Legal tender, again, is just any kind of money a creditor must lawfully accept as payment. Again, we have decided to use coins and paper bills, and that is only but done by the federal government. No state can make their own type of money, and because again, that's going to lead to more problems of what is accepted among other states and things like that. Again, big problems like we had under the Articles of Confederation. Okay, domestic powers, again, they can issue copyrights and patents, and they've been basically people can trademark their rights to promote their inventions and their ideas. Anything that is going to be about progress, innovation, things like that. New inventions, people can copyright those, patent those, and then nobody can steal those ideas or make money off of those ideas as long as they have those. The postal powers, again, they can establish post offices and postal roads. For example, some examples of things that they can do with that power is outlaw obstruction of mail and mail fraud, and then ban shipping of certain items. So, like for example, like if you get somebody's mail that you're not supposed to, you're actually supposed to give that back to the post office. Like if you just like throw it away or something like that, that's actually technically illegal. But again, it's not not really obstruction. It's just really people are not getting their correct mail. I might have made that up. I think you know what, you should probably give it back to the post office because that's the right thing to do. But I don't know that nobody's going to show up at your house and be like, I saw you throw away Mr. Smith's mail. Okay, so anyway, regardless, moving on. The other thing they can do is manage territories. Again, this includes non-states such as Guam, military installations, Puerto Rico, etc. They also have eminent domain. It's very limited because of the Fifth Amendment, but again, they can take private property for public use. They also can just, whenever it talks about managing territory, you talk about like buying and selling territory. Think of like the Louisiana Purchase or things like that are great examples. But anyway, that's another power that they have. Again, weights and measures, power to set and fix standard gauges of time, distance, weight, volume, etc. America is actually really weird with this, is that we are the only ones that don't use the metric system, or like at least one of the we're the biggest country in the world to not use the metric system. So anyway, that's really kind of a weird thing. But hey, that's Congress's power. Naturalization, this is actually not so much an enumerated power as it is an inherent power, but again, it still is there. So naturalization, they can set rules for naturalization, and they can ban and limit immigration if necessary. Again, you think of things like darker times of American history, such as like the Chinese Exclusion Act and things like that. Again, that is well within Congress's rights. They also have judicial powers, which is the power to create all federal courts below the Supreme Court. And they also can define federal crimes and set punishments that can be imposed. So again, we know that Congress passes laws, and they pass the federal laws, but also they can determine what punishments can be for breaking those laws as well. War powers, again, we know that Congress declares war. That is not the job of the president. Again, because of the declaring war power, they can also raise and maintain an army and navy. That's separate, but it is also kind of included in there. Kind of a side power that they have because of the declaring war is that they can draft Americans into the military. They also direct the National Guard. The War Powers Resolution actually modifies this a little bit because, again, we know that because of Vietnam and President Johnson and Kennedy and Nixon were essentially just operating a war in Vietnam without a declaration of war from Congress. So the War Powers Act and the War Powers Resolution, meaning in 1973, it actually limits the president. It limits the president's ability to fight undeclared wars. So the president can only commit military forces to other nations if Congress has declared war, Congress has authorized specific military action, or when an attack on the U.S. or its armed forces has occurred. So again, since the president is commander-in-chief, he still has the ability to kind of move forces, but he has to make sure to talk to Congress anytime possible. And also they let him know within 48 hours that he's moved troops, and then remove them after 60 days if Congress hasn't declared war. They also have the power to investigate. Again, they can inquire into any matters that involve lawmaking, really any matters that involve governing in general, anything about the federal government. The Congress is going to be able to investigate. Again, this is called legislative oversight. You don't need to know that word. But basically, it's just they're going to gather information to frame legislation. They oversee operations of the executive branch. Again, this is one major way that they keep the executive branch in check, because since the president enforces all the laws, we want to make sure that the president is enforcing the law appropriately. Okay, and then they can also focus public attention and expose questionable activities. And again, that's just really, in general, like they don't have a whole lot of power. Again, they have the power of impeachment that I'll talk about next, but it's harder for them to operate without, making the public aware of what's going on. So that's really an important part of their job. And really just they can investigate any wrongdoing and then take action if necessary. And that action will be impeachment that I'll talk about on this slide. So the executive powers they have are the appointment powers. Again, all presidential appointments must be approved by a majority in the Senate. Treaties also must be approved by a 3/5 vote in the Senate. The Senate may reject or accept any treaties proposed or negotiated by the president with any foreign nation or official. And I say 3/5. It might be 2/3. I'm going to double check on that, and I'll get back to you. Again, impeachment. The House has the sole power to impeach. Again, so basically what happens is if the House believes that some wrongdoing has happened. Again, think things like, I believe it's high crimes and misdemeanors, treason, things like that. The House can bring charges of impeachment. Basically, they just charge a government official with wrongdoing. And then after that, that charge is taking place. That's called impeachment. And then after you're impeached, then you have to have the trial in the Senate. Okay, so the Senate is the one that holds the trial. Okay, and they will need to vote by 2/3 vote in order to remove that individual. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, sorry. Other powers, real quick. Again, they can amend the Constitution by proposing an amendment to the Constitution. We've already talked about this. This is the main way that amendments have been proposed. Again, there is the separate ways by what you see here, like proposed at a convention called by 2/3 of the states. That's never happened. And then they also, for electoral duties, the House of Representatives is going to break a tie in the Electoral College during a presidential election. That should say election there. If you want to add that for me right there, I'm so sorry. And I think, I'm sorry. So last thing, so I've talked about what Congress can do. Now let's talk about what Congress can't do. Okay, so there's 3 major things that Congress can't do. Okay, the first thing is that they cannot suspend habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is Latin for like thou shalt have the body. Okay, you don't need to know that, but basically it's being imprisoned without a charge. Okay, so if you're imprisoned, if you're being held, you need to know why. Okay, and there's a very famous example of President Lincoln suspending habeas corpus very early on in the Civil War he was throwing rebels into prison without letting them know why, because he needed Maryland to not secede from the Union, even though it was a slave state. The second thing that they can do, or that Congress cannot do, again, remember the reason that was the president that was suspending habeas corpus. The Congress cannot do that, and technically the president really can't either. But Lincoln just said that, I need this power, so I have it. The second thing is they cannot proclaim what's called acts of attainder or bills of attainder, and that is punishment without a jury trial. So again, if you are essentially, if you are accused of something, you have to have a jury trial based on the Sixth Amendment. Okay, and a bill of attainder would be something that punishes you without a jury trial, and you can't do that. And then the third thing is enforcing ex post facto laws, which basically make something a crime after it was committed. So if you do something on Monday, and then all of a sudden on Tuesday they make a law that bans that makes what you did on Monday illegal. Okay, and then they arrest you for what you did on Monday. You can't do that. That's called an ex post facto law, and that is outlawed by, it's outlawed by the Constitution, and that's it. Okay, guys, let me check on the treaty thing real quick. Okay, figured it out. Going back to my treaty slide again, that is a 2/3 vote. I was right the second time. Okay, so 2/3 vote in order to approve a treaty. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. See you in the next one.